I'm going to welcome everybody. It is just about 8 o'clock right now. Just before we begin, I just wanted to let everybody know that Doug Abe is filming this event, so he's going to post it so that anyone who was not able to make it tonight can see what happened. I'm waiting for Manny. He got tied up at his business, but I'm going to go ahead with the two candidates that are here now so as not to delay the program too long. What we're going to do is we're going to give them each 5 minutes to speak, and after all the candidates have a chance to speak, then we're going to do a question and answer. When we do the question and answer, so that the questions are picked up on the video, if you speak loudly when you're asking the questions, then we'll be able to have both sides. So I'm going to start with Tucker Kelley, who is on the Republican ticket for mayor this time, along with Joe Jackson, who is on the Republican ticket.
Hello, everybody. First, I just want to say thank you to Pat Degnan and Mike Larity for actually having this, and I guess it's the
Civic Affairs
that put everything together, and just welcome everybody here that's in the audience. Some of you may know me, some of you may not. My name is Tucker Kelley. I'm 53 years old. I live in Rockaway all my entire life. My mother still lives in the childhood home that I was born and raised in. I was on the council for 4 years, 2018, and my term expired on January 1 of 2022. And in that period of time, there was one thing that I was very focused on, was actually being able to cut the budget. And in 2018-2019, we were able to cut the budget by 1.5 million that actually benefited the taxpayers with a reduction in a lot of the tax payments from those people. And in this year, if successful, I want to just go right into focusing on what I'd like to do. One thing is budgets and taxes. As I mentioned before, we're able to cut taxes 2 years in a row. It is a tedious process going line to line and going through what we can and what we can't cut. But since 2020, our entire budget has been raised by $4.6 million to where we're at right now. And I think with better shared service contracts, better negotiations that we've had, maybe doing shared services within interdepartments, we can probably recover some more money in reducing some operating costs and some of those wasteful lines that we have. In regards to the mayor's salary, when I was a council member for the 4 years, I donated my full salary to the library. We created a youth building program for children, and the money went to basically some of the programs that they had for some of their IT, some of their software, some materials to help with the children, and that was for all 4 years. This year, if I was successful as mayor, I would donate my full salary to the volunteer fire departments. And they would go into the general fund for the fire departments, and then they can do what they felt necessary to suit all 5 companies in addition to Green Pond Company. Municipal employee hiring. I don't know if many of you know, there's been a very large exit in the last 2 to 3 years of employees. Some haven't stayed around for the opportunity to even retire, and those that do have an opportunity to retire don't stay. They actually leave immediately when they're available to do so, to get out of Rockaway because of the constant toxic environment with our current administration and department heads. Just the past experience that we've been seeing with the police and the PBA, failed negotiations, bad faith negotiations, and then PERC complaints that came out and resulted in favor of the PBA to make this current administration act in good faith and resolve those differences, which they recently did. And that just happened for that. As I stated before with shared services, I can make an example on shared services for those that don't know. We actually offer services for other municipalities that don't have a department, or they can't fund a department entirely. So we provide that service for them, a full service mostly, at a discounted cost. So we have, in this case, would be like Mine Hill Court. Mine Hill Court does not have a court. So in the past, they were using Dover Court as a joint court. And at that time, they were paying roughly about $100,000. There was a disagreement between 2 mayors in Dover and Mine Hill. Mine Hill then came over to Rockaway Township, approached Rockaway. We're doing the same service for $70,000, $30,000 less. we could have got more. I think we have more of an opportunity and more of a value of Rockaway Township from our services, from our professionals, to provide that for neighboring towns. And that's just one of many. Our health services are the same. We have a health department that costs roughly just under $800,000 to operate, but we provide full health services for other neighboring towns, Jefferson, Butler, Kinnelon, Boonton, at a far discounted rate. And I just think, again, we are more of a value as an entire whole of our department with all of our professionals that work in these departments, that I think we can get more money out of those services to reduce operating cost. Again, police and safety, I will definitely act in good faith and negotiate. Though we have a 5-year deal for the police right now, almost 2 years of that has already expired because it's going retroactive back into 2021 to where we're at now. So before the mayor's term is over, there is a contract negotiation that would take place for employees as well, for police and for blue and white collar. The mall. I don't know if many of you have gone to the mall, but the mall is a ghost town. The mall has been declining as far as its vacancies for quite some time. I know COVID was a huge current factor of that. But again, a lot of online shopping, a lot of people that are staying home, having things delivered to their house rather than people going out to the mall. If you've ever gone through it, it is very, very quiet, even during the peak operating times. What many people don't realize, when the mall came in '77, it was supposed to be a huge rateable to offset a lot of our, does that mean a minute to go?
That's 5 minutes you have.
Can I just finish this?
Can I just request, since we only have 2 candidates here and we have time,
Yeah.
could we extend that to maybe 10 minutes each? Instead of cutting off and then having.
Okay.
You okay with that, Joe?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, we're
All right.
all right with that. Thank you for that, President. Getting back to the mall, in '77 when it came in, that was supposed to be a huge rateable to offset a lot of our operating costs that we have in the town. Basically a responsible development that was there, so it wouldn't impact our schools, minimize on traffic, but again, a huge amount of rateable that's coming in. What many people may or may not know is that those ratables and those assessments are based on vacancies. There's a small amount of, or lack of vacancies that they give for an offset, but in an early beginning of 2000, the mall had a $3 million appeal that they were successful on. We had to pay back over a period of time of 5 years. And with these reduced amount of vacancies that are there, it opens the door for potential appeals based on how they're assessed of vacancies. So bringing business in or attracting business to the Rockaway Mall to potentially fulfill some of those vacancies to offset those ratables is something that we really need to focus on. And then coming in our schools. There's 2 things in this. One, I'm not interested in government in our schools. I'm not interested in extreme woke agendas whatsoever. All these programs and everything they're doing in the schools is just absolutely out of control. The other thing that I don't see that we do in a lot of these budget discussions, I don't see communications that are going back and forth from our regional and local schools with Rockaway Township with our budget process. Collectively, if we work together to try to find reductions in their budgets, local or regional, as well as ours, we can actually reduce the overall budget for more of the taxpayers to benefit from. I mean, the biggest thing that people are doing, they're moving out of Rockaway, they're moving out of Morris County, and moving out of New Jersey because of the tax base, because it's hard to afford. Those that are on fixed incomes, a lot of the seniors that are here, those that are retirees that are on fixed incomes that way, it's just very hard and very difficult for them to survive here financially. So in that case, we need to somewhat bring back something to reduce those operating costs, not putting out a facade of a zero of our budget or anything being flat, because the overall budget itself has increased by $4.6 million since 2020. And those are things that we really need to somewhat go on. You know, you have to look at your government, and then you ask yourself the question, who spends money better, you and your own private budget or government? And most people, if not 90%, feel that they can spend their money better than the government can. And we need to listen to that and follow that, because if we operate government in a sense where we can just spend it all, and then if we want something we just tax people more, that's going to drive more people out. But if you actually operate your budget in government as if it was your own budget and how you would spend, there'd be a different result, I believe. And with that being said, I ask everybody for your support. Vote column 1 for Tucker Kelley for mayor. And if you have any questions, any comments, please ask me. I'm reachable. My cell phone is 973-886-8417. There's been flyers out. There'll be more flyers over here that you can get. And I'm always available. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
You want to just go up, or you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
This is Joe Jackson, another candidate for Republican
Oh, yeah, sure.
candidate.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mayor Joe Jackson. Thanks for coming tonight. Doug, thanks for filming. Ms. Degnan, thanks as always for putting this together. I think it's very important for our community for people to come out and be able to meet with the candidates. I view being mayor, it's not just about the budget and cutting taxes and expenses. It's about balancing, the needs of our community, from services, from sports programs, from public safety, to managing those expenses. How do you fund those programs, right? What's the most efficient way to fund those programs? So in my roughly year and a half that I've been mayor, what I've really focused on is growing certain programs and funding them through grants and other ways that don't cost taxpayer dollars. We've grown the Dial Ride program significantly. I think that's a really important program. We're now looking to expand some of what we do in the health department. Some of the exercise classes we offer within the municipal building, to put them out in the community, possibly go to Fox Hills, possibly come here and do exercise classes and offer that to members of the senior members of the community. So growing things like that's really important to me, and providing those services. As you know, we just finished the turf fields at Peterson. The next phase at Peterson in terms of recreation, we'll be looking at growing that, expanding Peterson Field and putting in more fields. They're needed, right? My wife and I go to a lot of the sports meetings, and you hear the need for fields, right? All these programs, we have a growth in our sports programs, our rec programs, so they need places to practice and to play. And so that's another focus I have. I think our infrastructure has come a long way since I've been mayor. We've made some improvements to the water system. We've made a lot of improvements to our first responders. We bought a new boat for White Meadow Lake, a new rescue boat. We bought, I believe, 8 new police SUVs, redid radio equipment, things of that nature. So improving the infrastructure, we made some changes to some of our buildings to improve the HVAC systems, our police dispatch system. Those things are important. Again, still, not having tax increases is important, and that's what I've been able to do in my time as mayor. In terms of the mall, since I've been mayor, I've seen significant growth in the mall. I think we've had at least 8 ribbon cuttings for new businesses opening in the mall. There's a new salon organization that's going to be opening where the pro haircutters used to be. There's going to be like a kind of Dave & Buster's type facility opening up at the mall soon. There's going to be more events at the mall happening in the near future. A dinosaur dig, I think you saw advertisements about that. I've been working very closely with the managers at the mall. We were there last weekend for the Kids Carnival, Career Carnival. There were thousands of people at the mall. Like, it was packed. And so, and my wife and I periodically go walking there at night. People are coming back to the mall, and they're being very aggressive. I've connected them with the Board of Ed. They're going to try and do more programs. The Morris Knowles Choir, I believe, was there last weekend singing. So we're going to try and do more programs at the mall to bring people back to the mall and raise their revenues. Those are just some of the things I've been focusing on. The other thing I've done is I've created some community-involved committees. So a water quality committee, Parks and Recreation Committee, and a Public Safety Committee. And the point of those, they're all bipartisan committees, and they're all staffed also with members of the public. And the point of those is to get people in our community involved in the government. I think that's important. Having a voice in, how our some of our policies around water quality, or some of our, driving some events out in the Parks and Rec Committee. Maybe we want to do a 5K run or something like that. I think all that's important, and so having people from our community actively involved in government is important to me, and I'm going to continue to do that if I'm reelected. You're going to see on Memorial Day, I brought back the Memorial Day Parade to Rockaway Township, so we're going to be marching down Fleetwood Ave to the new memorial, the Veterans Memorial. And if you haven't seen it, if you saw the old memorial at Park Lake, and you go look at it now, it's phenomenal. It's a much nicer tribute, in my opinion, to our veterans that served our country. especially the ones from Rockaway Township. So I want to do more things like that. I want to grow our involvement with the community and still keep our budget flat. And how are we doing that? So last year, I believe we had almost $750,000 in grant funding for projects. You're going to see there's a playground if you have daughters that play softball by the Board of Ed office. There's a playground there that was ruled unsafe and couldn't use it. We actually got a grant to replace that playground. So our health department regularly gets grants, and we're going to continue to do things like that. In terms of shared services, we currently do shared services with the borough on some things. I'm actually going to be meeting with the borough on Wednesday to discuss another opportunity to do a shared service program with them. We actually just bought one of their dial-a-ride trucks. So we're actively working with our partners. I've met pretty regularly with the superintendent of schools, Dr. Corbett, to try and talk about what we can do with the Board of Ed and with the Rockaway Township schools. We use a lot of their facilities today. We use their fields, and so how can we work together better? I've also had several meetings over at Christ Church, looking at how we can use their facilities. Our soccer program is over there almost every night. So, you know, what can we do more to partner with them? They have an incredible facility over there, and I just think there's more programs we can do over there. So my focus is really on, you know, senior residents, children, and infrastructure of our, and that's been what I've said since day one. You know, those are the things that are important to me. Those are the things that I think drive progress in our community. You know, you've seen, I think there's been a change in what people think about Rockaway Township. I think you see people moving here. I think you see people happy here. And I think the more traction we get, the more events we can do. It's just a great place to live, and I want to keep it that way. And so I hope you vote for me. I'm in column 2 for the primary, and I look forward to receiving your support. So thank you. And I also have flyers if anybody wants them.
Okay, now what we're going to do is going to do a question and answer. When you have a question, just raise your hand. I'll recognize you. You can say your name if you'd like to. If you don't want to give your name, that's okay too. But then you direct your questions to either one of the candidates or both of the candidates. And then they will each get a chance to answer your question. Okay. Michael Artie.
We have Tilcon above us with 2 lakes that don't treat, and the water that comes down to us, if it was treated, would be better quality water where we could treat less to get the water to a decent quality, which would then continue to flow downstream. Second point you were talking about with grants, and you got a playground. White Meadow Lake, I think, is maybe a third of the township, quarter of the township population-wise. And White Meadow Lake members, this is a private community, pays for all our playgrounds, all our ball fields, all the recreation things that happen within White Meadow Lake. Yes, it's only for White Meadow Lake members, but the township doesn't have to buy playgrounds for this entire population. But they pay for the playgrounds, and our tax dollars contribute to the playgrounds for all the other areas that don't have their own playgrounds. So I would like to see a mechanism put in place where some contribution can come when we need a playground, which services a big population of the township. That is a burden to just our members to pay for, where the township doesn't have any burden to contribute to any recreation that takes place in this large area with a large population of the township. Thank you.
Who would like to go
Sure.
first?
So first thing on the water, I agree with you. We are actively, I'm not sure if they're actively in process of pursuing a grant. I know part of the water committee I created, Charlie's on that committee. We're actively looking at things we can do to improve the water quality, not just in White Meadow Lake, but at all of our lakes around Rockaway Township. I think that's important. It's not just this lake, it's every lake. And so, you know, what I've tasked them with is to really come out with actionable items to come out of those meetings that we could take to improve the water quality within our community. In terms of the playgrounds, I kind of really thought about it the way you just said it, right? Your tax dollars are helping funding other projects across Rockaway. So I think to some level that makes sense, and what I'd look to do is have more conversations with you about it and talk about how we can come to some type of common ground around that.
Thank you.
A very good question. Thanks for asking that, President Larardi. One with Princeton Hydro. Maybe you're not aware, but with me living in the Lake Telemark area, we're involved with Hub Lakes. In Hub Lakes, we have our meetings and we deal with Princeton Hydro, which is an engineering company that participates in Hub Lakes. Mr. Bolgestad, I see there all the time when we do that. White Meadow Lake is very fortunate when it comes to that because you guys are sewer. And you have evolved out of the septic end of it, which then the quality of the water in the lake area has now gotten far better because of having sewer rather than septic. Unfortunately, in the Telemark area and the Green Pond area, we don't have that ability, and for that to actually happen would be almost impossible because of the ledge, the rock, the excavation, and it would be very difficult and very costly if we could. So that is one thing that is a huge effect with the water quality is because of sewage and runoff, and that's a big issue. So having those conversations and try to get grant money for either doing an analysis or maybe even coming up with a plan of other alternative ways to treat water that goes back into our contributors, that goes into our reservoirs, that eventually turns into drinking water. I know a lot of that is taking place. I know that Princeton Hydro is everywhere and trying to come and somewhat, not force, but entertain conversation with that and other municipalities that have similar issues with that. So I would be a proponent of that to see if there's any grants. We do have people in the township. Again, I don't work in the township, I'm not an elected official in the township, but knowing that there are individuals that do write grants that are there, and they do a phenomenal job. And I also believe that it's worth its while and weight in gold to actually hire a grant writer. Because what you would pay salary-wise versus what you receive in grant money to offset a lot of these operating costs that wouldn't put a burden on the taxpayer is really the way to go with that. On your second point of your question, when we talk about playgrounds and grounds itself, we had this conversation because you brought it to a council meeting one time when I was a council member, and I do understand your point, but I also have to look at the totality of the circumstances and what you're trying to present. When we have funded playgrounds that our taxpayer money pays for, everybody in White Meadow Lake can use those everywhere in Rockaway Township on public property. However, it's not the reverse. That other taxpayers and their children that aren't in the White Meadow Lake community can't use those playgrounds at all. We have a recreation program where we use White Meadow Lake and all the ball fields that were there. And I believe Mrs. Degnan may recall back in 18, we had offered free labor and equipment if you bought just some of the material to repair the infield area of those playgrounds and baseball fields. But at the time, it wasn't.
There was a discussion.
Yeah.
Yes.
What we did was there was an old gentleman, Dennis Monty and myself were offering free services of labor and our equipment and trucking to rebuild the ball fields over the A field, so it wouldn't cost the taxpayers any money. And then if there was, I think it was 15 yards or almost 20 yards of infield sand, that we would just pass the burden on to White Meadow Lake. But at that time, it just wasn't in your budget to do that. So the reason why we made that happen was because we were using materials paid by taxpayers' money to benefit White Meadow Lake fields, but only residents could use that during recreation programs, where White Meadow Lake could use them all the time. So it's a juggling effect. I don't know how you'd make everybody happy and whole of that, though it is something that we could have further discussions with. But again, looking at it on taxpayers that couldn't use it, hey, I'm using that, my taxpayers' money, but I can't use that. Why are we contributing towards that would be probably the common question. But again, there may be remedies with that. There may be other alternatives to do it. But again, right now, I think there would just be further conversations and come up with a plan to where it would work for everybody, non-residents of White Meadow Lake, taxpayers, as well as residents of White Meadow Lake too. Thank you for that, Joe.
Another question?
William Degnan. I have lived here for 54 years of my life, and we've gone from extreme right, extreme left in the nation right now. We have people who, of all different races, all different entities that live in all our communities. Right now, there seems to be a problem where it seems like people feel like they're not part of the township. They're not part of the community. And then all we hear is a certain candidate who has filed, if you look online, has 2 pages worth of lawsuits against Rockaway Township in the last 4 or 5 years, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, we as a community went from the extreme polar where we withdrew everybody, forced a recall of everybody on the council, to now we have a community of what we call Rockaway Township Green. It's not red, it's not blue. You have people like Manny who work, and Jonathan who work with the mayor and the administration, and it's not political infighting like you see in the rest of the state, the rest of the nation. Why can't we have stuff like, we have people with disabilities like me. We had a community partnership ADA, and the lady sitting next to you was the chairperson of that for many, many years. Helped build the handicap ramp up by Mount Hope Firehouse. Why can't we have more ADA accessibilities? I mean, we have a lot of senior citizens, we have a lot of people with disabilities in the community. We need the dial-a-rides, we need the health services for seniors, because some seniors can't get to where they need to go. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. My girlfriend lives in Oxford. She has to call for a ride, and the ride never comes. We have a dial-a-ride.
Yeah, she can't get out, she's in a wheelchair.
We have dial-a-rides. We need a community that works together, not apart from each other. And I would like both of you to discuss how you would work to make the community as one.
Joe?
Go ahead, Tucker, I went first last time.
Where do we start, Mr. Degnan? There's a couple of things that you hit there. Let's go under ADA compliancy that you're concerned with, right? So, I mean, under ADA, it's federal, and we also have Chapter 11 under the Uniform Construction Code, under 523, which we have to follow that with new construction and making things accessible. My mother is somebody that needs ADA compliancy because she's handicapped. I'll make an example. We have sponsored programs over at the gazebo in Rockaway Township. And there has to be a plan in place, a transition plan, when certain areas or structures or units or portions of the buildings aren't ADA compliancy, we have to make them compliant or have a transition plan in order to assist to have that. The gazebo is not. So we're doing all this construction over there, but we're not making it accessible for individuals to use the gazebo because of the stairs to go up onto the platform to look over. So that is one component. Again, there's 2 components with that though. There's the administrative code and there's also federal. As far as the dial-a-ride, well, let me just step back. I believe our Pondview Fire Department has got issues with ADA compliancy, and I don't even think we've opened that up yet because of some of those issues for that structure that's been going on. So I don't think we can put, maybe Joe can touch on that, apparatuses in there, again, because of its non-compliancy of one of those measures, which was ADA compliance. As far as the dial-a-ride and having people picked up, we do have dial-a-ride that's inside, and we also have MAPS, which is a county program that's run, which a lot of it, and people don't even know, is actually funded by casinos in the state of New Jersey. So MAP programs are sometimes a scheduled component to pick up the additional individuals that can't be reached by the township. And it's not just Rockaway, by the way. It could be all of our neighboring towns or all 39 municipalities within Morris County. If there's an overlap or there's a need or there's a scheduling issue, MAP usually picks up the torch on that, and they'll persevere to actually get individuals rides and transportation for those that have those needs. As far as Mr. Sackett and Manny Friedlander, let's not forget both of them. One is now running against Mr. Jackson and his administration, and one did run against Mr. Jackson and his administration because they had a difference of opinion. So though you morph that question into somebody saying that there was harmony amongst them, obviously there was an opposition of how Mr. Jackson's administration was running last year and of course again this year. So those two individuals that you mentioned obviously don't agree with the current administration or they wouldn't be running. As far as melting or merging people together, just doing the right thing. Really trying to show that there's advancement and we're taking the interest in the needs of the public and our taxpayers and businesses to move Rockaway Township. I don't think we've tapped into the potential of Rockaway Township so far. And it's not just with Mr. Jackson's administration, even prior administrations there. I mean, just the upgrades in our parks and recs, they've been dormant and lethargic for almost 20 years to where it came to a head. And again, I think there was a lot of wasteful spending to achieve what is there now, and some maybe poor engineering or planning, because some of the phases are actually making up for some of the things weren't done the first time. So that's one concern that I have. I think the other thing that Mr. Jackson did touch base on was about sports and children, and that's one big thing in seniors. Well, statistically, we only have about 60% of the children that participate in recreation, and of course we have our seniors as well. But we also have 40% of the children that don't participate in recreation, and we do nothing for them. So you're almost punished for not being in sports, playing football or basketball, soccer, hockey, and we don't do anything. There's a lot of children that don't have the urge to do that, maybe not the talent, but they're musically inclined. They have talents with gaming, drama, exercising, indoor activities when it's raining outside. It's getting kids out and about and having that social connection rather than being home and being stuck downstairs or in their room. And I'll believe it or not, Mr. Quinn has been championing that for what, 30 years now, Jack, or 25 years? And it's never come to fruition. So now we have a huge parking lot that was $1 million that was right behind the residents on Edith that are there. And there's a potential where one councilman wanted to put a hockey rink there, tearing up all of that construction that we did and all that money that we spent for a hockey rink that we're running 24 hours to maintain it. But we don't have these discussions and put money aside or come to fruition with doing recreation, again, to benefit everybody. That would be a really perfect hub to benefit seniors, children, and those that just don't participate in some of those other programs that are there. So that's one big thing. And you talk about lawsuits that are there, Mr. Degnan, and I don't want to avoid that question that we're there. We have had lawsuits. You know, when I first came in as a council member, in that first year, we had a huge lawsuit that was filed by our late mayor that was there. And at the end, and I have the documentation there, figuring that somebody would ask that question, that was $475,000. And it was dismissed. But then it was revitalized again with the second mayor, Mayor Puzio. And that was a little over $150,000 that we have in the budget under legal to do that. And then that was actually dismissed, most of it, and then it was withdrawn. So when you say about litigation, sometimes we're a recipient of litigation, we're part of it, and sometimes we're not. Some of it's unnecessary, some of them I've won, some of them I haven't won. And even those that are ones that I won, they're not wins. They could have been avoided, they could have been discussed, they could have been negotiated. But at the end of the day, the town attorney that we have, that's over $300,000 in contract and billing every single month, is an average of $30,000, regardless. That seems to be the person that gives poor advice and that gets paid whether he's right or wrong. So more litigation for him is more money in his pocket. And that's something that we need to work on. If I do get in for mayor, I can assure you that a lot of those things that have been litigated and some of those things that have been discussed, whether it's our police that filed action against Mayor Jackson and his administration for bad faith efforts in negotiation, offering our police minimum wage when they come in as new hires, 4 new recruits. These are things that create and spark litigation. Mayor Jackson just passed over the #1 candidate for a sergeant's position, wrongfully. That could be another sparking of litigation. So until you actually review the cases and get a better understanding that's there, it's easy to make the soundbite. But if you don't know the context of what happened and what was going on and being in court and listening to the arguments and the judge's position, I don't think it's really fair to make some kind of a derogative comment in the sense of litigation, because there's definitely more to it that's not getting out there. And all those other hate pages on Facebook, I don't go to them as sources of information by all means, because they're one-sided. They're definitely one-sided. But the information's there. Thank you.
Do you want this, or?
Oh, yeah.
So I'll start in order the way you spoke. In terms of the lawsuits, I mean, I have them all here. I've been sued for taking away Mr. Kelley's First Amendment rights. He's sued the clerk multiple times for ballot issues. A lot of frivolous suits, like he mentioned two, but there's a lot that just serve no purpose in reality. In terms of the police and what happened with the police, you know, the statements can be further from the truth. The police contract was negotiated by the administration in good faith. The police didn't file a lawsuit or anything like that and saying that we didn't negotiate in good faith. That's a completely untrue statement. In terms of promotions, you know, we went through a process to determine who was getting promoted. That included getting a recommendation from the chief of police. That's what we do. You're putting people in supervisory positions. You want to make sure you're putting the right people in supervisory positions, and that's the way we viewed it. So keep in mind that as a council member, Mr. Kelley eliminated 3 police positions, two officers and 1 sergeant position when he was on the council.
Which is not true.
So that should be noted. I have the minutes from the meeting right here. Yeah, voted yes to eliminate them. In terms of bringing people together, that's what I'm trying to do. You know, we're constantly out, and I'd appreciate if you didn't interrupt me. I didn't interrupt you. We're constantly out meeting with people, sports groups, senior groups, things like that, trying to get people together, trying to hear what people want from the township, and that's important. I've been a Meals on Wheels driver. I've gotten out to meet with people as I'm delivering meals for the past 5 years. You know, getting people to volunteer and do more things like that, I think is important too, and that's what we've been trying to do, right? I created these committees. Listen, the Democrats are always going to run somebody for mayor. I think they'd be stupid not to. So it doesn't mean they disagree with me. It means that they're running somebody because they want to become mayor. I mean, I have no grudge against Jonathan for running against me last year and Manny for this year. We have a very good relationship. I work well with both of them. They're both on one of the committees I created. So I disagree with those comments. In terms of ADA, we have professionals. We have an engineer. We have a health officer. We have professionals that deal with all these things, and that's who I rely on when they're making these decisions around the different facilities we have and what updates we're doing. I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, Dial-A-Ride, we have done so many more things, and we will continue to do that. I think it's one of the most important services we offer to the community, and getting seniors more active, getting them out of their houses, out of their apartments, wherever they live, and getting them to do activities is personally very important to me. So we will continue to do that if I'm re-elected mayor. So that's all I have around that topic. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
No.
This is your chance.
Questions, Mr. Craig?
Chance, guys.
No, Mr. Morrison?
Actually, this is Rachel Brooks. So my question specifically for Mr. Kelley, you mentioned that children were being punished in the township in the recreation program if they didn't participate in sports. You also then earlier made a comment in reference to being involved in the school budgeting process. One of the things I know our school district does, and they do it phenomenally, is our music program, our talented program. Our regional high school is one of the amazing theatrical programs that other towns look to send their kids to. They also keep that within the school day as part of their budget, something school districts are doing away with every day. It's a large expense, but it's extremely important to the Rockaway Township School District and to the Rockaway Township community. I'm just curious on your thoughts on how you would be part of that budgeting process and what type of services or resources are you looking to potentially eliminate there?
From school? When you talk about, I didn't mention anything about reducing services from the school. That wasn't something that I commented
You're
on.
looking to lower our taxes.
Yeah, to try to work
so
in it. Most of the time, the biggest
How
issue
would you
is,
do that without reducing services, salaries, and/or staff?
well, no different than what we did before in 2018 and 19. When you do an overall of the budget review, sometimes you have to agree, you may have the ability to have shared services within the department. You know, having an assistant administrator, an administrator, and a superintendent, and then really the administration is really the one that takes a large amount of the money in salary and personnel, as well as the nepotism that comes in there. And there's always a revolving door of some of these superintendents and positions of administration. So I'd probably focus on that first. I wouldn't want to reduce any services that are there. If there was an option to actually increase services and educational programs that aren't offered in other schools that we can actually have, to where schools pay for that program in our school, which we currently do now, if there was a possibility to increase that of those programs to revenue, bring in more revenue to offset some more operating costs, absolutely, I would be a proponent of that. When you talk about being punished, and when you say the music program, again, we have recreation programs that kids don't participate in. And no, there may be kids that are musically inclined that aren't part of the music program, but maybe there's a volunteer that would want to have a class or a course over in the rec center for music and for kids to play and enjoy themselves, and practice, jam out, have a concert outside of having the school presence. There's always those options that are there. So I don't think that would be a burden. I think that would be an asset to attract more kids that would come out musically with other children that are interested in that particular music area. But being punished and removing services, no. Nothing bars having elected officials communicate with other elected officials in different areas. Our Wharton mayor, Mayor Chegwin, who was a phenomenal mayor, and they're debt-free over in Wharton, he does reach out. He's a school teacher as well as Morris Knowles. And that was something that he was really attracted to, was trying to work together between these other school boards, regional and local, to say, hey, let's see what your needs are, let's see what our needs are. If you remember, our administrator made a comment, needs and wants. We got to focus on our needs and worry about our wants later. And those are things that I think we need to really digest, because I think sometimes their wants are overstepping our real needs, and that's costly to the taxpayers. Thank you.
Joe, do you have anything to add?
No, I'm good. I
Anybody?
do, well, I'll just say,
Mr. Sackett's here too.
I do think there's great programs that our schools offer for children that aren't involved in sports, and I've had several conversations with Dr. Corbett about that. We've attended several of the events at the school, so I really do think they offer great opportunities. And Mr. Sackett's you look tan for some reason. Oh, okay, yeah. Any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah, there's got to be some. Mrs. Tabadella? Somebody?
Does everyone have a few more minutes?
Yes.
Because Manny was able to get here at the last minute, so he'd like to read a statement so that it can be published on the video also. Okay.
It's not a statement, it's just my bio. My bio is my statement.
Go ahead.
Ready? Okay. Good evening. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Manny Friedlander, and I'm the Democratic candidate for Rockaway Township Mayor. Just want to give you a bio about my life history in Rockaway Township. I came to Rockaway about 40 years ago. Before that, I do have an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army. And I started in White Meadow Lake with the little committees that are formed from the POA. And then I got involved with the Lions Club. I joined the Lions Club and moved and was in every position up to president. I was also the I-Mobile chairman and chairman of Camp Marcella. I raised two daughters in this town, and at their ages, I coached softball, girls basketball. I became an umpire, certified umpire for boys. Major League Baseball and women's baseball. Currently I'm serving my third term on council. And on the council, I was liaison, my past and present liaison positions were Historical Society, Substance Abuse Alliance, Library Board, Recreation Committee, Regional School Board, the Ordinance Committee, the Vehicle Review Committee, and Environmental Water Safety. I promised when I got on the council that I would serve my friends, my neighbors, and do everything in my power to make Rockaway Township better. And I am running for mayor to do even more for this town. And that's about it. Just moved up to the next level. And like I said, I promise to work harder than I've worked before and make Rockaway Township better for everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you, Ms. Degnan.
Well, I thank everybody for coming. I believe this is a helpful way to get the information out on all our candidates. As I said, Manny got delayed at work, and these are only part-time positions that we forget about, that they're only part-time positions. They have full-time jobs that they have to do before they do these positions. So I'd like to thank the candidates for coming. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank Doug for
Thanks, Doug.
putting this out so that those who couldn't make the meeting tonight will be able to see what went on here today. And we will have a candidates night in October, which will include all the candidates for all the different officers that are available to come, including the county offices. And if we can get the state ones to come,
Better
I
start
start
that
working
one
on
earlier.
that now.
Start that one earlier.